talking about a wild one. You know, I'm going to start with this, but I will tell you, if somebody, just one person can turn to these, if somebody wants to turn to Isaiah 60, I'm going to let somebody read there, and then we'll read in Jeremiah, Isaiah chapter 60. All right, I want to show you something, all right? And I know some of you missed last week, but that's okay, because it was this period of time right here, basically. So where we're going to start tonight is right here, and I want to show you something. From the time of Jesus' death, all right, when prophecy began to kick in, okay, stuff began to unfold. The most common one is AD 72, where the temple got destroyed. And Jesus said, every stone here will be thrown down. Not just taken down, but they literally threw it off of the retaining wall. And exactly what he said happened in AD 72. And basically, when we went to Israel, we looked at temple stones laying on the ground at the bottom of the retaining wall. Okay? So, but here's a unique thing, and I've always found this very, I guess God, the way he does it is he lets things build up. So you have, and matter of fact, Yolanda asked me something about this a couple weeks ago about the creation basically of the body of the church, right? And basically, if you take the Bible, it would have been like just right there, just like 50 days, because that's what Pentecost means, is 50 days. And the Holy Spirit came upon the church, and the church began to grow rapidly, right? All right. So there was prophecy being fulfilled until AD 72. And here's the unique thing. There is a few prophetic things that occurred in this period of time, but 1,881 years from here to World War I, and you would think, you would say to yourself, well, you would figure most of the prophecy and stuff would begin to unfold in that period of time, but it literally just basically almost faded down to nothing. All right? But right here, at World War I, prophecy not only kicked in, but it literally began occurring in a rapid-like speed, and that's what we're going to go over tonight. And you will be amazed at just some of the prophecy that I'm going to name out tonight. I couldn't name them all out. We'd be here until tomorrow morning because of all the different things. But we're going to start right here with World War I. All right? Now I want to show you something, and I find this quite, I love history, all right? Right before World War I, they took a census, and they basically come up with 1.6 billion people on the planet. World War I, okay? Now, here is, I want to give you some death ratios, which God foretold in Matthew. Wars, rumors of wars, pestilence, plagues, all these things will come to pass prior to the second coming. All right? Here, here, and here. Now, I want to show you something. All right? World War I, basically 40 plus million people died. Okay? Great Depression, basically 101 million people died. Great Depression was worse than World War I. Okay? World War II. I'm gonna go ahead and go to all the deaths because I wanna bring this to your attention. I don't believe they posted this one correctly because from World War I to the end of World War II, the Earth's population didn't hardly grow at all. They're saying that 75 million people died in World War II. And that was an estimate of known. So they're basically, again, you could be upwards of 100 million people again dying, perishing in World War II. Now, here is something very unique, all right? Right here at World War I, the UK took back the land of Israel. They took it from the Ottoman Empire. They took it from the Turkish people, all right? They beat them. They basically re-inherited it. And they made a covenant that they did not keep. They made a covenant with Israel to give them back the whole land of Israel. Matter of fact, if they would have kept their promise, it would have went into Jordan, it would have went up into Syria, it would have went, their territories would have almost 3 times the amount of territory that they literally have today, okay? So a covenant was made, but something had to occur. And what it was is the bringing back the Jews. All right, you remember when Nebuchadnezzar took all the Jews from, basically took all the Israelites out of Jerusalem and took them to Babylon, right? Well, Nehemiah's time, they were all supposed to go back. Well, only a few of them went back. They didn't all want to go back. They liked where they lived. All right? That's the same problem that was here. Basically, the Jews were not unhappy with where they were, so they really weren't coming back in mass exodus, right? So the Great Depression happens, and following, and see I have the dates here, World War I, 1914, Great Depression was 30,
1939.
no, that's World War II.
30, 32?
Yeah, it was 30, I had it, let me look again. I had it, I think I just forgot to write it down. But anyway, 1929, okay, so 1929, I'll go ahead and write that up there. 1929, okay. So you have Great Depression 1929 after World War I, and disease, people starving to death, and basically, you know, it's funny to say this, and it's hard to believe this, but usually whatever happens in the United States kind of bleeds across the world. Not necessarily to every country, but that's what occurred. Basically, a lot of countries all went into depression. Matter of fact, if you remember, and we're going to get into some really interesting stuff here in just a second, where did Adolf Hitler come from? And why did he come to such power so fast? Because Germany was suffering from a depression that was so bad, people were literally sitting on the street starving to death, like that you read about in Africa, in Germany. All right? So basically this happens. The Jewish people are still spread all over the globe. Matter of fact, you want to know the neatest thing, and me and Bill talked about this one day. We could not figure out why the names in the book of Revelation of the 144,000 were out of order. Okay? But then if you look in the numbers, you find out that some of the tribes face north, some face east, some face south, some face west, and the tribes went to different directions. So basically, when God's talking in the book of Revelation about the Jewish race coming back, the Jewish race is an amazing race. They can near speak every language on the planet. Now what better 144,000 missionaries would be that if they could speak every language and just about go to any country and evangelize, right? So God ends up bringing about this depression to a point that it is so terrible that it brings an antichrist, a full-fledged antichrist. You got to remember the Bible says there is one great antichrist, the end-time antichrist, but there's many antichrists. So history from all the way from Rome all the way to now, even right this very second, you could point at leaders and say, yeah, there's one who follows Lucifer, there's an antichrist. Okay? So, and I got so much I think I'm talking too fast. But anyway, so you got the creation of Adolf Hitler. He finally comes up to a power point, and the man actually goes to jail, does all kinds of stuff. One of the most fascinating things you could ever watch on the History Channel is about Adolf Hitler, because it was like he rode some roller coaster, and he had the most fascination with the occult, right? And this is only a document of saying what it was said, but in, I believe it was Switzerland, I'm not perfectly sure, but they had this spearhead, all right? So this spearhead was said to be the spear that pierced the side of Jesus. Most likely it wasn't, it was just found and they claimed it to be because whatever. But anyway, Adolf Hitler, they said, basically, made a deal staring at that thing with the devil. Basically, what he did is he said, you know, I want this kind of power. So he comes into basically mass power around 1936. He actually had gone to some amount of power, but is actually to the point of building military, building everything about 3 years prior to it, give or take, right? All right, now here comes prophecy after prophecy after prophecy fulfills, all right? So, what is his objective once he got to a point? If you remember, at first, England, nobody would fool with him, right? They said, he's just taking back land. Even the accord he had with France was null and void to him. Basically, he was going back after all of his property, and he lulled England to sleep, all right, until Winston Churchill took over, all right, which is a fascinating thing. So he finally comes around to the point of saying, okay, I've built everything up where I need to be to take over the world. Now, he should have realized something, and you know, here's a terrible thing I'm going to mention. Did you know Adolf Hitler claimed to be a Christian? He wasn't. He wasn't even remotely Christian, but he claimed to be a Christian. All right? So he begins to take over countries, one after the other, and finally the Allies had had enough. The United States didn't get any good. All right, so England declares war, and basically you might as well say when England and France declared war, Hitler signed a thing saying, I'm going after the ones I had to sign a treaty with, and he took out France like it wasn't nothing. Matter of fact, if you look at the history of it, he goes around their line that they made, and that all that money they spent to defend themselves, he just goes around it, takes it over, takes the country over. And here's a unique thing. He pushes the entire English army to the ocean. All right? They were saved, and I'm not going to go into history as far as that goes, but everything that is occurring happens almost like a perfect puzzle. They're being put together right now. Okay? So now Hitler gets to the point where he is just thrilled at where he is. Now he's going to go after his master's objective. And now this is fascinating. I hate to say it in that because of such horrors that happened to the Jewish race. Because I literally love the Jewish race. But what occurs is, in modern terms, is a Jewish flight. They're trying to escape Adolf Hitler. And it's not bad enough that Hitler is a maniac. Stalin, right above him, is just as happy to kill the Jews as he is. And once Hitler and Stalin begin to fight, they still go after the Jews. Even though they're fighting one another, they still go after the Jews. All right? So Israel is being beat to a pulp, and now you got to remember one thing is, remember during World War II, World War I, after England took out the Turks, they basically had a chance, and a few did come back, not many, just like you read in the Bible about Nehemiah. But now they're fleeing in every direction. And you see these things coming to pass that the Bible speaks of. And now we're going to start unfolding some of them. All right? So the atrocity of World War II was foretold that the Jewish race would be just basically beat down to the ground. I mean, they have really and truly nowadays, it's not like you can go up to an Israelite and say, what tribe are you from? Because, to be honest with you, everything was so destroyed, so wiped out, that basically, you could be from Benjamin, you could be from Simeon, you could be from Judah. They don't know what tribe, basically, they're from. They are trying to work on that, actually. Now they're trying to find Levites, which is going to be another one of the come-to-pass prophecies, right? So World War II comes to an end. And here's a fascinating thing, right? And I say this is past. I cannot change it. I hate the atrocity that Hitler did or anybody does against the Jewish race. I mean, they are the most persecuted race on this planet. There is no other race more persecuted than the Jewish race. So, if you remember, when they found the first concentration camp, right? Matter of fact, General Patton was so angry. He goes into a German town, clears the entire town, and brings them to the concentration camp and asks them, you did not know this was going on? So America literally does what it's supposed to do. It stands up for the Jewish race. And now what occurs next is a most fascinating thing that was told. So here's the first unfolding, right? What is one of the first actions that the United States took after World War II was over? They created the UN. Okay? the European Union, none of these things were actually there were allies, but the UN was created as a one world government. Beginning of the one world government. So all the pieces now are coming here. It's like God takes this piece and now he puts this one in place. Now here's a very unique thing, all right? So the United States creates, basically they don't create it by themselves, they're part of the creation, but you could say they took lead on it, creating the UN, all right? So there was an agreement made with England. Now, this is quite unique. Now the Jewish people are ready for a homeland. They're ready to go home. They're afraid of people now coming to persecute them. You think about it. You can look today's date, you can look, and the Jewish race is beginning to be persecuted again, right now, all right? But they were loading up on boats, doing anything they could, and guess what England did? Blockaded them. They stopped them from going back. They named it, all right, basically Caesar changed the land of Israel to the land of Palestine. Okay, there is no such thing as Palestinian people. There is no such thing as a Palestinian person. Most of them either came from Egypt, Jordan, wherever they came, they're an Arab race of people surrounding. But it was called Palestine because of this Caesar, and he basically named it that because of the Philistines. He named it after basically Israel's worst enemy, the Philistines. That's where Palestine came from. So God now is saying, okay, this piece of the puzzle isn't like a one little piece. This is a big little piece. This is a piece that sticks right in the middle of the puzzle. So what God does is the President of the United States stands up in front of the UN and he says, we got to give Israel back their land. And I think if I remember right, and I could be wrong on this, I believe there was only 3 votes for Israel, but the United States was one of them, and they said, we're giving it back, and they said to England, you're giving it back. Now, in 1948, in one day, the Bible says Israel would become a nation again in one day. Basically, you remember in Ezekiel, God says, I'm going to take, you remember all the concentration camps? They're a dead race. I'm going to put meat back on their bones. I'm going to put flesh on them. I'm going to breathe life back into them. They're going to stand back up and they're going to be a nation. So God, in turn, does exactly what he says he's going to do, creates a Jewish state in one day. Another prophecy. Boom, gone. Now prophecy's going to pick up speed. All right? So God said that basically Israel would be a thorn in the side of all of its neighbors. Right after they were created, what happens? All the Arab races go in there and attack them. And one of the funniest things is, guess what Monday is? Monday's Yom Kippur. And, you know, it's basically you're supposed to fast 25 hours on Yom Kippur, right? Day of Atonement. You're supposed to start 6 or 7 o'clock at night. You're supposed to stop, you know, if you started at 6, you're supposed to stop 7 that night. And it's a wonderful holiday. I don't understand why Christians don't celebrate it because, I mean, our atonement is covered in groves. It's a permanent atonement. But, so, the next one is the Yom Kippur War. And boy, did the Arabs make the worst mistake ever. You attacked God's people on God's day? What kind of common sense is that? They got whooped. The 6-day war. And you want me to tell you something? They should have never got whooped. Because on Yom Kippur, they shut down all of Israel. Everybody is fasting and praying. There wasn't nobody out there watching. One guy caught them coming in and basically started fighting until everybody could get there. And it was 100% the hand of God. Again, another prophecy foretold that once they were back in the land, it would never be taken again. Never be taken again. So, as a matter of fact, I tell you what, let's do this. We're going to do a couple little readings here because of something. I want to start out. I want to show you something. I'll start first. All right, Jeremiah 28. And listen to this. Only listen to this message I am speaking in your hearing, and in the hearing of all the people. The prophet who precedes you and me from ancient times, prophesied war, disasters, and plagues against many lands and great kingdoms. As for the prophet, now here's what you really got to follow. The prophet who prophesies peace. All right?
What verse are you in?
I'm in 9 now.
9.
Okay, I'm sorry. I should have waited. I apologize. I guess I'm too
I
excited.
didn't know where you started.
That's
I don't think we
yeah.
did.
I'm sorry. I'll start over.
Yeah.
Okay, 28:7.
Thank you.
28, chapter 28, verse 7. And because this is really what the whole class is about, so I really need to start over again anyway. Only listen to this message. I am speaking in your hearing, and in the hearing of all the people. The prophet who precedes you and me from ancient times prophesied war, disasters, I have said it a minute ago and I can say it, and plagues against many lands and great kingdoms. As for the prophet who prophesies peace, only when the word of the prophet comes true will the prophet be recognized as one whom the Lord has truly sent. All right. So what God's saying is here is, all right, hitting one prophecy. You know, I don't know if many of you ever heard of Nostradamus. Have you ever heard of him?
Yeah.
Okay. He throws stuff out and it's random, and you can pick it up and you can miss here and pick a piece up here. Basically what God's saying is if they don't hit 100%, don't listen. If it ain't 100% right, it's 100% wrong. That's what he's saying. So he says, listen to what I'm telling you. All right? So God claims that Israel would go back into the land. Now, man, you talking about unfolding some prophecy. Watch this for just a second. All right? It was foretold that they would begin to speak Hebrew again. And they have. It was foretold that they would begin to use the shekel again. And they have. Okay? It was foretold that the worst dirt on the earth would blossom and bloom and would be, do you know Israel deports food? I'm talking about they send food out for sale. I saw something. I am a farmer. I am not this kind of farmer, but I am a farmer. I work cows. Mr. Schuster's a farmer. You know, I think, Foster, you farm. There's farmers all in here. I can guarantee you won't find one farmer can tell you they've seen this. I went where they had banana trees, and went up a hill and they had cherry trees. That's not possible.
In the same soil?
Because they don't grow in the same
Yeah.
places. You grow cherries up north, I can't even grow a cherry. I got good dirt. I can't grow a cherry tree. They got cherry trees. I went over there and they says, I think it was 40 shekels for a pound of whites and a pound of reds, and I got a pound of each, and they were the best cherries you ever ate, and they were magnificent. You could go right down the street and get bananas and oranges. They grew stuff that we've got a country, 100 times bigger than theirs? And we have to grow our stuff all over the place. They got fields of wheat and barley. They can grow corn, tomatoes, cows, pigs. They got it all there. Well, they don't grow no pigs. Now that part I was wrong on. They're not big on pigs over there. No, I will say this: I miss bacon while I was there. You know, I like what that Amir said one time. I heard him say, he says, "You pig-eating Gentiles." And he says, I have to bless mine and turn it into turkey. So, you know, so you have this country who had no trees, no fruit, no vegetables, no nothing, this rocky soil, and now it's blooming everywhere. There's trees everywhere. Every single prophecy that was foretold when Israel went back into the land has unfolded. Okay? Not one has been missed. All right? Here's a very unique thing. All right? And I would not have ever said how this could be possible, but it happened. All right? So Israel now is such a prosperous country, right? When they took the land back, basically what they inherited was rocks. That's what they got, rocks. As a matter of fact, one of the Jewish leaders says, you know, we're the only country here that doesn't have oil. You know, the country right beside us got oil, above us, below us, all these countries have oil. Guess what they got now? Oil. Gas. Matter of fact, they got enough gas to rival Russia. It said that Israel would grow into a powerful nation. You know, there's two countries right now that all of us should know about. One is Germany and one is Israel. You know Germany's like the 4th strongest country again? They said after World War II that would never happen again. They're like number 4 in the world in strength. They have technology. They have wonderful men. They're selling arms all over the place. But the funny thing is Israel is number 8 strongest nation in the entire world. Now, and I want to point something out that I said to you so you would understand something at this point, right? Remember what I told you Germany did to England? Pushed them to the ocean? All right, a couple of generals back then, basically, they named out a size of a piece of property that you would need to stop an advancing army. So if you had to, you could retreat back. They got this thing where, okay, we need to retreat back to where our supply line can resupply us, and we can fight back the army coming at us, right? Do you know Israel's not big as that piece of land that general called out? And do you know nobody has ever pushed into Israel? Even on those wars, when they were always did the pushing, okay, that land technically is undefendable. It was like, you know, Susan asked me a question the other day. Could Israel stop Russia? Not a chance. Not a chance. Russia has this thing they love. They'll line up 1,000,000 cannons and 1,000,000 trucks with rockets on it, and they'll just wipe out everything in front of them and they'll move forward. Okay? So, how would Israel, which is my next prophecy, which has come to pass, okay, how would Israel ever defend against an army of Turkey, Russia, and Iran? Not possible. Not possible. Even with nukes, they'd be totally annihilated because Russia has nukes. I mean, Russia, 2 nukes, bye-bye Israel, right? But the funny thing is Israel won't be doing the fighting. God will be doing the fighting. Israel will stand back and watch as God tears their head up. And a long time ago I said, well, that's not possible. You know, too many countries in front of Russia for Russia to be part of it. Iran used to be buddies with Israel, and Turkey used to be buddies with them. No more. Iran hates Israel. Turkey hates Israel. Russia has trucks on the border of Israel. Basically, you can say Syria is little Russia now. You know, Russia over... go ahead.
So didn't they have those ships lined up on right there at the Mediterranean? Well, they are there now.
They have some, yes, they do. Matter of fact, here's a unique statement that was made. And you know, my son-in-law, he's in the military. And at the time, this is years ago, at the time, he mentioned something to me that was militarily told to him, and he told me about it. He said, Russia's got a new tank. And they moved them, I mean like hundreds of them. Like one day they're in Russia, the next day they're in Syria, okay? Tanks, airplanes, it was like overnight, Russia is now there. The funny thing is watch this. Again, another piece of the puzzle for prophecy and putting it together. When we went to Israel, we went to the Golan Heights. And everybody said, oh, when you go to Israel, you're not going to go to Golan Heights. Shoot, man, we went to the Golan Heights. Whoop, went up to the top of it. We're standing at the top of the Golan Heights. We're looking into Syria, and you see UN trucks in Syria. Okay? You see a UN base in Syria. And you see this barbed wire fence. Now, here's a powerful thing, all right? You know, Russia is a member of the UN, but they are also a coalition of basically backdoor countries. So they don't like Iran, but they're buddies with Iran. They don't like China, but they're buddies with China. And you know, all of it is basically all things falling into place like God claimed it would, to say, okay, the world is aiming, and you think about something, and I got to stop here because I almost jumped ahead of something too fast. Back in 39, all right, how did you call Europe You know, how was the communication basically done? So, like if you wanted to, you didn't just pick up your cell phone and call somebody in Europe. Yeah, it was a landline, right? Okay, and then it was basically debatable whether you actually would make it through to the other side of the world. All right, so communication was nil and void because if you remember something, Pearl Harbor, how on earth did all that go wrong with Pearl Harbor? It was all communication, right? Everything was slow. Now you can pick up a phone and you can see what's happening in Israel live. What's going on right at the second. You remember when that boat docked in Libya and that ammonia nitrate fuel bomb went off? All right, looked like a little nuke, didn't it? I don't know if you got to see it, but it was fascinating. I mean, I watched it from 20 different angles. That sucker tore up some dirt. I mean, it wiped out solid concrete silos. It tore up all kinds of stuff. Every bit of that news hits you instantaneously, right? And that's the next prophecy at hand, okay? So Russia, basically we'll do this. Russia, Iran, Turkey, Sudan, and Libya, okay? Basically are your countries that you're watching as we speak. So what was the next thing that had to begin after Russia basically got in place? Foretold would happen. All right, the peace treaty. I had several people call me up and say, what is this peace treaty? Well, I can tell you what it is. It's Gog and Magog. It's the beginning of Gog and Magog. It was foretold in the Bible that this peace treaty would occur. Now, let me say this. This is not the peace treaty of the Antichrist. What this is the peace treaty of Gog and Magog war. All right? We actually might witness this. You know, it's a fair chance before the rapture that it could happen. It's a fair chance we won't witness it, right? But the simple fact of the matter is, it said basically that the what's it called? The United Arab Emirate, okay, and these countries and Saudi Arabia, and if you remember in the Bible, the young lions of Tarshish, all these countries will say to the attackers, are you going after their money? And that's what they're going after basically, is their money, their wealth, their technology, and everything else. Israel has some really neat technology. I mean, they can literally tell you where weapon stashes are, and they're like, how do you know that they're there? And they're fascinating in how much technology they have. So this peace treaty has to come to pass. So now, basically, we're right in here, all right? Now, there's another unique statement that God told us about. And this one, go ahead. And here is the statement that was made, all right? So he basically says that Israel will have to have a temple on the Temple Mount when the Great Tribulation. It doesn't mean the temple will be built before the 7 years. It just means that it'll be there during the 7 years, okay? Now, the other day, this happened, and I mean, I'm sure it doesn't really matter what I say, but the other day they were talking about the Ark of the Covenant. Okay? That's the only piece that Israel doesn't admit to having. All right? Now, is it possible they have it? I'd say it's very possible. And I'll tell you something else. I'll say this. I almost think it's impossible for them to, if they do have it, to take it out. Because the Ark of the Covenant is one of the most sought after things on this planet. Not just by Christians, not just by Jewish people, not just by Israelis, but by the Arabs, by anybody. Because what is resting inside of there is not just proof, it is 100% fact that God is whom he says he is.
They're scared.
It's very scary. Now,
They're scared.
yes, they're
They're
terrified.
terrified.
Yes,
Yeah.
they are. Many people are terrified to find this. Okay? And now, this was said when we went to Israel, that they believe they know where it is. They believe Josiah hid it. When Babylon came in, they believe Solomon created something to where it could be hid and not lost. Because if you remember, it's only been really lost technically one time. Remember when the Philistines took it for a little while and it messed them up so bad, they took it to a farmer across the border and said, you can have this back. We don't want it. You know? So they're like, we don't want to touch it, you keep it. And what happened to the farmer? Everything he put his hands on prospered. Yep. So now if this, and one more thing, and I think I've showed this to everybody. I don't think I showed it to everybody, but I might have showed it. But I want to show you something. And I know people say, oh, you shouldn't be adding to it. But this is a temple coin to raise money to build the temple. I'll pass it around. I want you to look whose picture is on this temple coin. Trump.
Trump's on?
Now,
Donald Trump, today's Trump?
Donald
Yes.
Trump is on.
Well, how old is it?
This is new. This shekel has only been out for a few years, okay? As far as I know, a few years. But it has a lot of unique stuff on it. You really got to look close to it to see all the unique stuff. But why I bring this up is another statement that was made, all right? When Israel went back in the country, who owned Jerusalem? Not the Israelis. Israelis didn't own Jerusalem. Matter of fact, Israel still to this day does not make claim of the Temple Mount. But now, the war that occurred, Israel took back Jerusalem, but the entire world turned its back, which is so, I don't understand. That is theirs. Give it back to them, the Temple Mount and all, right? And they're in the country, everybody turns their back on them, including us, including the United States. Donald Trump gets in office, and here's the unique thing. And the other picture that's on this is Cyrus. 70 years passed, Cyrus sent him back to Jerusalem. 70 years passed, Donald Trump makes Jerusalem the capital of Israel. Now, I'm going to pass it around.
Everybody else was at McDonald's.
That's right.
No, they were referred to.
That, yeah. I'll put it to you like this.
He stayed there a week and came home and everybody forgot about it.
Yeah, yeah. And the funny thing is about all this is each thing that happens, I don't really believe that humanity realizes that it is occurring, like Mr. Schuster just said. They basically let it fly off the cuff. They don't realize that is another fulfilled prophecy, that Jerusalem would be the capital of Israel again. Basically, before the time is up, the temple will go back on the Temple Mount, just like said in Matthew. But here's one of the last prophecies I'm going to be able to do tonight is this one, all right? I don't know how many of you seen this TV show, but I have a tendency to like to watch secular stuff, because a lot of times you'll literally hear a secular person mouth off prophecy and they don't realize what they're saying. Okay? So there was a show on TV. Who's the actor that did it? It's about God. He's got such a unique voice.
The black guy?
Yes, black guy.
Um,
Morgan Freeman.
Morgan
right?
Freeman.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So Morgan Freeman does this TV show about God. And I watched all the different aspects and everything else, and I caught many of things, but I never caught the one I was looking for, and it came out of a Jewish lady in Jerusalem, out of her mouth. And she prophesied word for word. I don't think she really knew she was doing it. But she prophesied on TV. Morgan Freeman asked her, says, whom are you looking for? Whom is your Messiah? Okay, we know who the Messiah is, King Jesus. He is the Messiah. He is the one to come back to the earth again. And in this, I'm going to show you something. So this lady is telling Morgan Freeman who they are looking for. And when she says this, my eyes go like, wow. She said these exact words. We are looking for a man, not the Son of God. We are looking for a man who will bring the world together through politics. That is the Antichrist, word for word, the Antichrist. And you remember in Matthew, God says, here's how you can tell when your time is almost up. The abomination of desolation will stand in the holy temple, in the Temple Mount. He will stand and he will say, I am God. And that's what she was looking for that person to come. You know, this is, all these things, and really, if a scientist picked up the Bible tomorrow and he took a history book in one hand and the Bible in the other, when he left, he's either converted or he's not possible to be converted. Because it's basically like so many people have said, I'm going to show you where the Bible is wrong, and then you find out they're born again and saved. Because they read and they say, this is not possible. So here is this prophecy, what I was telling you, what she is hunting for, what this lady is hunting for in the Messiah. This professor in this college made a statement one day, says, all this stuff in the Bible is wrong. So he starts reading it. And one of his first statements is, Daniel wrote this after the fact, which that got blown out the window when they found the Dead Sea Scrolls, basically. So, but do you remember how Daniel called out, basically, the 69 weeks, which we've discussed, all right, and then the 70th week. Now, there's some really neat stuff in the pipeline with everything that's going on. Because it's almost like where in the 1960s you might have been able to say, hey, I saw a prophecy in first one I've seen in 25, 30 years or whatever, but now you can almost turn the TV on and you can watch them unfolding daily, basically. Especially like with the peace treaty they got now, where all these countries are saying, yeah, we want to recognize Israel, we want to recognize Israel, okay? So here's the one that, you know, I gotta ask you a question at this point. You know, does anything really gotta happen prior to the rapture? No. Nothing really has to happen. Now this whole class was based on that bear sheep prophecy, okay? I didn't get to do the actual bear sheep prophecy, but it was kind of based upon it. Now, here's the funny thing is, the Temple Mount, all the things that we're watching go on in the world today, the simple fact of the matter is the people, each person out there today in the world, how many people did you pass today that have really no idea about this stuff going on? You know, I tell you what, I sat in restaurants and I sit at job sites and I sit in places watching people walk around park. I wonder if they know what's going on. Because if you go by what Jesus said in the Olivet Discourse of the pestilence and the diseases and the earthquakes and you know, the world is so afraid, and I don't understand this, but they did a test the other day, and I watched this because, like I said, I'm fascinated by history and by things that fit in the history. So they did a test the other day, and this was so unique. They took earthquakes since they've been recording them, right? And they looked at intensity, and they looked at how often they happened. And they went back, I forget what it was like 40 some odd years, I believe is what it was. But they showed this, whatever reads the earthquakes, they showed it, and it was like here to here. They're going up in numbers, and they're going up in strength. Hurricanes, all these natural disasters going along with everything that is going on in the earth. But my question is this, you know, I'll be honest with you. Do I take that bear sheep prophecy as true? No, and yes. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know when God's coming back. But I will tell you this, if, you know, you probably, if you would have been here in the early 20s, maybe the 1910, you could basically say there's all kinds of stuff missing. Piles of stuff is missing. These things aren't coming together. And the final thing is this, you know, the rapture of the church in Zechariah, you know, a lot of people say, that's not in Zechariah. Maybe not, maybe so. Now I want you to think about something. And I asked a Jewish fellow this one time in Israel about this. How will the Jews recognize whom they pierced? All right? You don't think they know what this Bible says? They may not believe it. They may not recognize it. But the Old Testament points at Jesus with all 10 fingers pointing at him. And all they need to see is one thing, and I believe this is the one thing that they might see. I'm not 100% sure. This is just an estimate from me, but it says they'll see whom they pierced. All right? The rapture of the church clearly says this, that we are brought up to the clouds. Now, how many of you ever seen a bird flying up around the clouds? I mean, you can see it all the time. I've actually watched a bird one time, and them storks that come out of Texas, they'll disappear in a cloud. They fly so high, you know? You think about something, all right? I want you to picture something that Jesus did on the 40th day when he left this earth. He came to the mountain, was going up the mountain, was taken up into the clouds, and an angel asked the disciples, the apostles, why are you standing there looking up into the clouds? And then he makes a statement, the angel does it, he says, you're going to see him come back in a like manner. Now, all right, so to finish, here's the finish. I want you to picture something. Imagine one day where the Temple Mount is, these clouds start rolling in. You know, all of a sudden, now Israel, and this is another thing, Israel's got eyes pointed in every direction. Every direction. Ground, they near try to look underground. They watch so much stuff. They got their eyes in the sky. They got their eyes everywhere looking for rockets and people sending rockets. I want you to picture, where would be a perfect spot for King Jesus holding his shofar and the Archangel Michael standing beside him, and he blows that shofar and that Archangel hollers, standing over the Temple Mount in the clouds. You know, and people, how many Christians would disappear off the ground in Israel? And how many different, it doesn't say that he hollers for us and then he disappears. It clearly says we will meet him in the clouds, in the air. Israel looks up, sees King Jesus, the archangel, and all these people appearing in the clouds. Can you get any more to see who they pierced? Man, that would be, and I mean, if you did the math, that's the only thing that figures. He's going to have, I mean, I shouldn't say that. Sorry about that. I shouldn't say he's going to have to. God doesn't have to do anything. But I believe that that's where he'll do it at. Because you think about something. God is omnipresent, right? Michael is not. And you think about it for a second. Why did God add Michael in it? Why did God say he would blow the trumpet and Michael would be there and do the shouting? Come up here. Because Michael is not omnipresent. So that means God's got to be in one place. Michael's got to be with him. What better place than standing over the Temple Mount?
Robert, isn't there something in the Bible about he's to come through the eastern gate?
Yeah,
Is
that's
that-
second coming.
You're right, that's the
Yeah.
second coming. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm wrong.
No,
I'm
you're
confused.
good. You're
I'm
right there
confused.
at it, trust me.
That is we're talking
Yeah.
about the first coming.
That is the second coming. That is where the Mount of Olives is split down the middle, and that graveyard is gone, and they got that
It's
whole
blocked
eastern.
up.
They got that whole eastern gate blocked up. The
Jewish.
no,
No?
the Turks did it because they were terrified the Messiah would go through it.
I mean, it's like a,
I mean, they
Big
walled it up
wall.
solid as a rock.
Wow.
You know, the only thing humans do is think, put blinders on, but why? Why do we as human beings put blinders on? Well,
Not to accept,
you know, I mean,
Actual.
basically, the magnificence of God is impossible to explain how magnificent He is. You know, you think about something, I've heard people try to explain something God says He's going to do supernatural. Now, I don't know about you, but I ain't real good at explaining some normal things, much less supernatural things. You know? So the simple fact of the matter is, the power that God totes around is unfathomable. You know, I mean, you think about something for just 1 second, and then I swear I'll try to finish with this, but I'll try. But you think about something in this, you think about, all right, the day the rapture occurs, let's just say for a second, that God is standing over the Temple Mount. We're exactly 7 hours on the other side of the earth difference between here and Jerusalem, right? Okay? So, I don't know how close this will be, but I just want to tell you how freaky it would be, right? All right, I want you to think about something. Let's just say that particular day you went to the graveyard to visit one of your relatives. I want you to think about this for just a second.
The dead will rise first.
First. So you're sitting there putting a set of flowers on it. Somebody reaches up and grabs your hand and says, let's go. You know, so I mean, I know I'm just kidding, but what I'm saying is, how do you explain that? And I mean, you think about it, human beings are already right now trying to get us ready for the rapture for the people who are unsaved. Aliens, you know, the bad folks are gone, some disease wiped them out, whatever it is, whatever they make up and say, but they will not be able to explain something. Our technology, you think CNN won't show news now? What are they going to do with the video of all those people in the clouds? What are they going to do with that video? You know, because you think, I forget how many cameras they said they have on the Temple Mount because of terrorism. And I remember seeing, I don't remember how many cameras we saw when we were there. They're all over the place. But you think about it. I mean, they already got all the cameras focusing in on the Temple Mount. It's clearly going to be there. You know, I think anyway, I believe. What better place would it be? It'll be the one that answers the question.
Well, what about where it says that, you know, our bodies will be changed?
In a blink of an eye.
Right.
Well,
So
actually it says in a twinkling of an
There'll
eye.
be spirits, and humans can't see the spirits, but they caught in pain.
No, what will happen is and here's the best way to explain it. All right, I'm walking around in a fleshly box, basically, right? This box ain't me, okay? Me is the spirit and the soul God put in me. That's the reason why everybody has different personalities, right? Okay? So the wonderful thing is this is wonderful. I mean, seriously, I wasn't kidding a minute ago about the grave. The people who are dead and buried rotten, their body is turned to dust. Their bodies will literally be put back together, zapped up, and you'll be standing there in your brand new flesh.
It's going to be a glorified body.
Glory.
You
You will see it.
see it. You see it.
Well, let me put it to you like this. You remember Thomas? Jesus said, put your hand in the side, put your finger in the holes in my hands. But the funny thing is about our new bodies, we don't need to open that door. We'll be flesh, but we won't need to walk through a door. We walk through walls. You know, we'll be made like him as he is. You know, the funny thing is about this is, I don't not only believe that they'll see us, I not only believe that we will go from whatever age we are to a perfect age.
Whatever that perfect.
Whenever you look like probably in your
In
20s.
your best day
yeah.
in your life.
And you know the funny thing is, all my scars and broken bones and all the cuts and everything I got, all that's gone. I won't have gray hair no more. I'll be back to a red-headed beard and black hair. All right, so,
I kinda like my gray hair.
well,
You
I
earned
guess
it,
if
right?
you want to keep it, God will let you keep it.
Only because it's supposed to be in style, and I've never been in style of anything in my
Yeah,
life.
that's right.
With my
You know,
hair.
you're right, because my daughter said something to me the other day about gray hair. Go ahead, Mr. Schuster.
Well, we have one thing we take for granted. I've got this from Alfred,
Yep,
and he says that if you concentrate on your dreams and you stay in the Bible enough, you find out something about yourself.
yep, yep.
And he said you'll be so amazed about it, you'll go a month or two and won't even talk to anybody about it.
You know, I
And
swear,
that was Billy Graham's first mentor.
I swear to you, Mr. Schuster, what I'm about to tell you is the whole truth and nothing but the truth. I was reading the Bible today, and those exact thoughts came across my mind when I said, you know, it seems like here lately God has been unfolding more things and making me understand them better.
I can get up with the blues. You know, some man gets so stupid, they gets himself in so many different responsibilities,
Yep,
they hate to get out of bed.
yep,
Yeah.
And,
been there, done that.
and you can get up and have a good prayer time, if you have a good walk with the Lord,
Yep,
and you're like a new man by 9:30.
amen, amen. You're exactly
You
right.
say, oh yeah, I finally got my brains going.
Yeah,
You don't even think, hey, God finally got you going.
yeah, you are right. I've been a many a day not prayed and had the worst day ever. Been a many a day I hit my knees and prayed and had a good prayer and had the best day I ever had. You are so right.
And then your wife comes along and says, oh, you're just a dreamer.
Well, every
And I
now and
said,
then.
no, I'm just an optimistic. She said, no, I'm a realist.
Yeah,
Another thing is, we've got up before on Sunday morning, and I would be irritated. I'm not going to church with you today.
yeah,
Get dressed, Stephanie, you're going to church. I'm not going. And then something comes over you that says, you better go,
yep.
and it ends up being a good day.
That's exactly right.
And you're ashamed for acting the way you
Yes.
did.
Yep, yep,
Being honest with you.
Yeah.
yep.
I think
Don't
we're
say
seeing
anything.
something that we just, let's just watch this.
Oh, yeah.
Franklin Graham's in pretty deep.
Yeah. He is, and that thing
And
is
Mr.
tomorrow.
Trump's in pretty deep. Trump.
Oh.
And God's letting us see a show right now, he's letting us see a very bleak picture.
Yeah. Well, I'll put it to you like this, I'm not a prophet, but I will promise you and say something is about to come to pass. I don't know what it is. You know, you can just feel it in the air.
And we don't have a clue, do we?
No, no,
I watch it every day, I'd turn it off today.
yeah.
Said, hey, I've seen enough of this, I
It's
gotta
too
get
much.
on with life.
It's too much
It's too
argument
much.
first.
Yeah, it does. All right, I'm gonna close this out with prayer. I don't hope I went over. No, I didn't. I'm actually about on
Very
time.
interesting.
It
All right.
was good.
Let's go. No, I'm on. Merciful and wonderful Father, thank you for all your knowledge. Thank you for all your wisdom. Thank you for, most of all, Lord, the book you gave us that is full of warnings. And it tells us to keep our eyes open, watch, don't be lazy, look up, and follow you in everything that we do, and tell as many people as we can and snatch them out of the fire. And I thank you, Father, for your mercy and your grace towards all of us here tonight. And I give you all the praise and all the glory in Jesus' name. Amen.